Welcome to the Clarity Advantage podcast. I'm your host, Steve Yapsuga, and today is a special episode. I'm really excited about this because, as we've talked about over the past couple of weeks, the workforce has changed and leadership must change with it. Part of this massive change deals with education. Over the past 2 decades, the education and higher ed has changed dramatically. Specifically speaking, we're talking about enrollment. Enrollment numbers just over the past 4 years have gone down massively by close to 800,000 students. And with small schools, those schools that are under 3,000 total, that's even been more massive, up to 50% plus in terms of cuts with enrollment. And there's a lot of different varying factors with this. Today, I'm really pleased and honored to be here at Goucher College with Ken Devereaux, the president of Goucher College. Ken, welcome, and thank you for having me.
Great to be here.
Really excited. We really hit it off at the Towson Growth Summit and really enjoyed what you were saying. And what I'm really excited about having you on for this interview is talking about innovation, because Ken is a tech entrepreneur and he's an innovator. And a lot of these small schools are running into a major conflict and a conundrum, because a lot of folks and the pundits are saying today, those that are podcasters or so-called experts or serial entrepreneurs are saying that college isn't necessary today. And they're saying that people can just start their own career. And looking at a smaller college that's liberal arts, you wonder, how are these schools able to help differentiate today, to be able to help increase awareness, increase stickiness? How would you deal with that, the big elephant in the room?
Yeah, the big elephant in the room. I mean, a couple ways that we deal with it is that, number one, we always ground ourselves in the facts, and not saying that the past is any sure indicator of what the future will be, but it's pretty clear from all the studies that have been done, specifically even looking at Goucher, Georgetown University study on the workforce and education, really looked at this and kind of pegged us and said, what's the value of every different college's degree? And over a lifetime, a Goucher college degree is about worth $1.4 million as if you had not gone to college. Okay. And I look at that and I say, the average student debt that our students graduate today is $30,000. And I say, that's a pretty darn good investment. I bet on that one. But I think more importantly, the pace of change is just increasing. I just look at my own family. My dad was a teacher, taught the same place for 35 years, retired, had a pension. Great. My father-in-law was a senior executive at Kodak, a company that barely exists today. Same thing. Worked there for 35 years, retired, had a pension, no problem. I've probably had 10 different jobs in my lifetime in 3 completely different industries. My undergraduate degrees in music, my graduate degrees in technology. So it's taken me in very, very different directions. And I look at our students today, they're not only going to have 6, 7, 8 jobs in their lifetime, but they may have even more diverse than my 3 different careers in music, tech, and in higher education. They're going to have completely different careers in different industries. And so having that broad foundation that a college provides is absolutely essential. You can be think about it. 5, 10 years ago, everybody's saying, you got to be a coder. Everything's got to be about, if you don't code, you're going to not have a job. Well, look at the impact that AI is having, especially the latest release with Claude. Where that's going to be going in the next several years, that's changing the entire, and if all I knew was I'm going to skip college, I'm going to go to a boot camp that's going to allow me how to code, suddenly I'm out of a job, and where do I go next?
Well, and that's part of the problem, because the workforce today, leadership is saying, we're going to adopt AI. And the workforce is saying, how does this affect me? How does that change me in my career? Because we're just saying we're going to adopt it. Is that going to change my future growth? How is that mentorship? Because prior to hitting record, we were talking about how middle management has been decimated.
Yeah.
And we've lost middle management. And so that mentorship layer is gone. And what's interesting, the past couple of weeks, I shared in my podcast that we're now down to the highest churn rate at 3.9 years average stay for an employer in the United States. And that's unprecedented since the 2000s. It's going back to 2006. So if we look at that high velocity rate, that's actually not even the full story, because we're looking at Gen Y and Gen Z is the highest velocity, where you've got Gen X and the boomers that are still hanging on, that are still part of that ecosystem, that are staying much longer. So that's another challenge as well. So you've got the younger workforce coming in that lost that mentorship, that lost that guidance. And I'm looking at, how does Goucher help kind of face that for multi-generation? And I've seen some of the things that you've done, which are admirable, with Edenwald, for example, that the partnership with Edenwald. And you did that as a lease, working as from a lease standpoint with Whiting Turner. I would really like you to maybe take a little bit of a deeper dive of why, but also what are the outcomes? What type of desired outcomes would look like success for you? What would that look like as success with Edenwald? And then what would it look like success with, we could dive in a little bit later, Whiting Turner?
Yeah. And I think you're spot on in terms of recognizing and hinting at a little bit of the why behind we did that partnership with Edenwald. So most people look at this. Goucher College moved out here to Towson in 1921, really started the campus. Then, of course, the Great Depression and everything else. So the campus development really started post-World War II. And since then, we've expanded the campus out here. But we originally had 421 acres. Over the years, we'd sell off different pieces. Where the Towson Town Center Mall is today used to be Goucher land. Where the Sheraton Hotel next door used to be Goucher land. And in 1985, we sold 9 acres. I think it was 6 to 9 acres, can't remember which, back in 1985 to Edenwald. And they moved out here and built upon that. So right next to us, we have this continuous care community, nonprofit, been in business for 144 years now. Very stable, great, fantastic reputation, well run. We're looking at the future. So you cited this decline in the demographics in America. I mean, since late 1970s, every year the birth rate's gone down in America. So we are at a point, this is no surprise to higher education. We can look out 17 years and we can see who our future students are. We know exactly how many. And that trend line for the next 17 years is going down, 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 down. America's aging, meanwhile. So by 2034, we're going to have more people over 65 than we do under 20 for the first time.
Right.
And so for us, it's not just about kind of saying we have a continuous care community right next door to us. Lease land to them, allow them to expand on the campus. Most people look at that and say, oh, it's a real estate deal. Yeah, it's a real estate deal because we have 300 acres of land and we can leverage that. But what we're really looking at is we're saying 15 years down the road, we're going to have a smaller undergraduate age population. People are going to have more of a need to do job retraining. So hence our graduate programs, our certificate programs will grow. And also, if your biggest population in the future is going to be people over 65, and things like AI and other technologies are going to allow people to retire earlier, have more leisure time, do a variety of different things, you start looking at that and say, that's our future area of growth. And so I've often said that 20 years from now, I would expect the Goucher College, a third will be undergrad, a third will be grad, and a third will be lifelong learning. We're just starting this process now. It's very, very clear. That's those long-term trends. Demographic is destiny. Those long-term trends, we're not going to change them. So can you catch that wave? Can you actually start to get prepared? So as this evolves, you can start learning what works, what doesn't work, adapting, innovating, iteratively designing solutions that'll work for that population.
Sure. Do you envision this groundswell as a new generational workforce, the retirees coming back to participate?
Oh, definitely. And it's interesting, once again, looking at my own family. My father retired, never did anything. Today, I'm always itching to do the next thing. And I look at all my friends, they're like, yeah, this is my encore career. Or I got bored and I'm coming back, I'm doing something different. And I meet many of the people who are going to be moving into Edenwald, they're looking for the same things. They're saying, what is this about AI? What is this about quantum computing? What is it? I don't know about this. And even things that may be contentious in the press. You think about a year or two ago, everybody's talking about critical race theory. And we're like, and people honestly said, what in the heck are they talking about? And so we offered a short course in critical race theory just to allow that population to understand what they're talking about and it's not something that's a central component of our curriculum, but it's just another theme that kind of runs through everything else, like the concept of postmodernism. what in the heck is postmodernism? People want to know. That's what a college should do, is educate people at all levels, whether it's workforce related or just for their general education, to be basically more informed citizens, to actually participate in life more fully.
But you're talking about stickiness with the workforce change, and talking about retirees coming back and building that better interconnective tissue. And we've seen plenty of stories and heard plenty of stories of people that retire and then 3 months later, because they're not doing anything, they die. Or they lose their will to live. And I've seen a number of trends with Goucher, with the push for online communities, online training. How are you able to help bridge that gap from a mentorship standpoint? Because it's online. And do you see other ways of being able to help create better traction within those online students?
Yeah, but I would characterize it very much like how our workforce has developed. I always joke that there were some positive outcomes out of the COVID pandemic. And that number one thing for me is I will never, ever have to build an administrative building at Goucher College again. We have a third of our workforce working from home on any given day. It's provided more flexibility. It's allowed people who have young children, working moms, just to be able to retain them in the workforce, to allow us to basically kind of work things, a totally hybrid workforce. And people are very comfortable with that. We have 2 employees that have never set foot on this campus. They're elsewhere in the United States, and they work as part of our team. And I would never imagine that that would be possible on a higher education campus 10 years ago. But today, no problem. We're able to integrate that. So we've taken a very specific stance on this, that we have in our graduate programs 90% online, because we're talking about things that is coursework that supports people in their clinical areas. If they're placed in a school, we're the 4th largest provider of teachers in the state of Maryland. So we have a very large education program. So there's online coursework, but then they're also working in the classrooms around the state of Maryland. So we're doing that. At the undergraduate level, we've flipped it the other way. It's 90% in the classroom or project-based, hands-on, and 10% online. We've offered some short-term online courses, and then students can take online courses at other universities. And we also Zoom in professors from the flexibility to kind of mix and match those things is much more the way the workforce is today. And we want our students to do that. And I think one other benefit of this in the Edenwald partnership is we're now offering co-generational classes. So anyone who's now moving into Edenwald could audit any of our classes at no additional charge. And that's fine. And that's just one more student in the classroom. And sometimes they'll notice that this person's older, and sometimes they won't. There's no change in the classroom. But we're also developing classes that specifically are designed to challenge the co-generational opportunity there. So think of a class about the history of the civil rights movement with people who lived through the civil rights movement, and 18-year-olds who kind of have no clue what's going on.
That's outstanding. Yeah.
So to kind of create those opportunities for
rigorous conversation.
Conversation and exchange. But what we're also doing is we're training our students for the workforce that they're going to go into, because they're going to be working with people of all ages. And if they think just texting that person who's a boomer, or maybe on the high end of the Gen X population, is going to be appropriate in the workforce, I think they're going to be surprised. And so each of them is kind of trying to figure out communication skills and collaboration skills. And if I talk to CEOs today, that's what they're looking for.
If you like what you're watching, please like and subscribe.
Yes, they're definitely looking for that experience. You want to be able to show experience when you're just getting out of the get-go as a young new starter in the workforce. And Goucher has been known as one of the most diverse colleges in the country, with the highest diversity. I could think it's the second most diverse, but one of the other pieces that I've seen as a great takeaway is that you're one of 2 schools in the entire country that has mandatory international studies.
Study abroad.
I'm curious about this White and Turner partnership. And if folks aren't certainly aware of that, having a 99-year lease and a program where they're going to be on this property, they're going to be on the beautiful campus here. And with this partnership, they're going to have their headquarters.
Correct.
Their headquarters right here on campus.
Correct. Yeah. So, slight correction here. So it's a 50-year ground lease.
Oh, 50-year. Okay.
50-year ground lease. Edenwald's a 99-year
Yes.
ground lease. And with the Whiting Church, 50-year, and people say, why the difference? With Edenwald, we wanted to make sure it was more than the life of the building, and
Okay.
it allowed that because Edenwald's making a commitment for those people to be there forever and allows lots of opportunities going forward. With Whiting Turner, it's interesting that this will only be, it's a 109-year-old company. This will only be their third headquarters. So they've been in each of their buildings for about 50 years. And so they decided, okay, here's a 50-year lease.
Right.
By then, there'll be time. We're contractors.
Sure.
We're going to want to build the next building. It's like, okay, on to the next.
Let's move on.
Let's move on. And that's okay with us. And we will see. And Tim Regan, the CEO there, and I joke about this because we're like, neither of us are going to be alive. Let's just make sure we do something that our grandkids don't curse us. So, or in this case, the Whiting Turner employees. And so we really approached this from the standpoint of, we had 6 acres of land at the front of campus along Delaney Valley Road, and we had a lease that went all the way back to 1957 with the Peabody Institute, which was then a separate independent institution. Well, in 1977, it was acquired by Johns Hopkins. And the irony of this is that the lease payment on the Peabody property was the same as it was back in 1957. So we're saying, not a terribly good use of 6 acres of land right there at the front of the campus. And so we had some conversations and reached an agreement with Johns Hopkins and Peabody for them to exit there this summer. And Whiting Turner is going to be taking over those 6 acres of land at the front. And they're building an absolutely stunningly beautiful new corporate headquarters that, I mean, once again, to huge kudos to Tim Regan and Whiting Turner's team in saying, let's commission a headquarters that reflects Goucher's architecture and the way it looks and fits in.
Aesthetically pleasing.
And of that 6 acres, I think 2.5 acres is the campus and 3.5 acres is going to be woods. They're really looking at how to create something that is conducive and gives people a reason to come in the office because they're working at home, and give them that. And it gives us a reason to basically partner with them with new internship opportunities, new training opportunities, as the whole construction industry is changing with technology once again.
Sure.
I mean, on the job site now, it's lasers and drones and green technologies and mass timber and solar, and Tim was just talking about a whole project they're working on nuclear now. It's the whole. There's lots of opportunities for the future for our students.
A true campus environment. And you're looking at, this could be the new playbook for adding other high profile companies to be able to come in and have a tech incubator that's in a college setting. And there's the juxtaposition of change, but also how this is played with the community. How is it played with the faculty? How is it played with the students? Because they could look at this and saying, there's been talk years past of saying a business sponsoring a school, and having different high profile brands, they could slap their label on it and say, we're going to be part of this. And how does that, what's the cause and effect for the students and faculty?
The way we've approached this is we have steered away from slap your name on this building kind of approach here. And actually, a lot of the private donors we talked to today, they're like, I don't want my name on a building. That's okay. I'm doing it because I love what you're doing as a college. I want to support the institution. So I think there's a generational change there. Maybe the greatest generation, older than the boomers, may have been more interested in that, but we're seeing that change. But if you look, Edenwald, been around for 143 years. Whiting Turner, been around for 109 years, privately held, both based in Baltimore, Maryland, been here. You can see very clearly we're picking our partners very, very carefully. And then that can pretty much tell you as we go forward, we're going to be just really scrutinizing every partnership, because at a college, at a university, you're not doing something that's going to be 5-10 years and switching up. You're going to you're looking at something where it's 50 to 100 years. You have that kind of, it's just a different framework. And so you really, and quite honestly, the time it takes to do a small deal or a large deal is about the same amount of effort. And the only value that comes out good in those kind of deals are the lawyers on both sides have to negotiate things.
Sure.
We want to be, as a small college, very careful about the kind of partners we pick. And so we go in deep. And so at multiple levels. So I could pick apart what we're doing with Edenwald, and there's probably 9 different components of that. I could look at what we're doing with Whiting Turner. There's probably 4 or 5 different components of that maybe it started with the real estate.
Sure.
But yeah, that's just the foundation. And then from there, we build upon it.
Right. I love it. What's the response been internally for students and faculty?
Yeah, when we did the Edenwald deal and announced that it was a shock to our students. And of course, well, the 2 things that came up right away was, okay, does this mean if we're going to have Edenwald residents, will I not be able to get into my classes? And we're like, no. You full-time undergraduates get first dibs, and then Edenwald residents, if there's space, can then register in that class. Non-issue. And then the other thing was like, are the Edenwald residents going to be using the athletic facilities and the gym and everything? And we're like, no, they have their own facilities. That's not going to. And it was like, okay. And it kind of went on from there. And that deal being the first one kind of shocked everybody. And then we started to see these things happen where they just started to connect in interesting and social ways, with more Edenwald residents coming on over, attending lectures and things. At lunch, people saying, let's try their dining hall and those kind of things. And you start to see these friendships develop, and it's like, because they recognize them from the class, and they start kind of, and from there, it's really evolved in a wonderful organic way, far better than I could have expected. And I will say one other component of this is that we have right now, I think, 3 faculty members and 2 staff members living in the Edenwald facility. Why? Because there are certain apartments that when they designed them back in 1985, they're too small for today's market. For somebody saying, I want to downsize, I want to move in there. But if I can offer an incoming assistant professor who's moving into the area and say, hey,
Game changer.
your first year,
Game changer.
free housing.
Absolutely.
Right there, 5-minute walk to campus. It gives you time to get situated in Baltimore. You can decide, do you want to rent, do you want to buy, where do you want to be?
You can bring in the best and brightest.
It's risk, and what's emerged from that right away is our faculty who are there are loving it because they get asked in the hallway about a subject, and they're like, I mean, they're teachers. They love it because it's like more people asking about this topic. It's like, that's a great, and so the Edenwald, they're developing friendships. So after that faculty member moves out and they decide where they're going to live, they're going to be, if those Edenwald residents come on campus, they're going to have that relationship. So I think there are those things that we're seeing very much that are encouraging, because now that's been 2 years after we made that announcement. Once we made the announcement with Whiting Turner, we didn't have a similar response. It was like icy. The first one kind of broke the ice.
Sure.
And the second one was like Whiting Turner, construction company, internships, engineering, construction. I can see that. The students immediately made that connection.
Muscle memory is coming in.
Yeah.
So if we're looking at Whiting Turner, because I want to dive into this a little bit more and scratch that itch, because Whiting Turner, you're creating a brand new model that could be replicated with bringing in other businesses. Because one of the challenges, if we're talking locally and specifically just for Maryland, Maryland's had an exodus of businesses. There's been many businesses that have left, and certainly population. We talked about population, talking about business, and how it's difficult to do business in Maryland. And you bringing this back, it's a shot in the arm. It's a breath of fresh air. What would you look at as what's the ideal next play for another ideal company?
Yeah, good question, because the overwhelming majority of our students come from out of state, Maryland, and they come in. So we're more similar to Johns Hopkins in that way, is that we're a net importer of talent. We like to say that the difference between us and Johns Hopkins is that once we bring students in, they stay in state. With Johns Hopkins, they're great, and then they go elsewhere. And that's kind of our personal rub with Johns Hopkins. But if you look at a lot of the other colleges, the majority of their students are in-state, and the challenge is how to keep them in-state. And everybody's picked their lane. I mean, Hood College, McDaniel have gone, Notre Dame College and University have gone deep in healthcare, nursing, and physical therapy. And we've stayed out of that lane. A whole another level of certifications and accreditations and clinical. And we've said that's where there's a huge need in Maryland, and that's great. Where we focus has been education, but now you can start to see construction, environmental. You can start to see big need, even bigger need than healthcare in the next 20 years in Maryland is actually elder care. So the partnership with Edenwald, if we're looking at, we're not sure where that's going, but we're starting to look at what does that mean for us in terms of neuroscience? What does that mean for us in terms of psychology and therapy? What does that mean for us in terms of home health care and things? So there's a lot of things there that we're looking at, but you can clearly see those are two growth areas that we see in the economy that we can do. And we'll see what comes along next. Clearly, with the completion of the Lewent Science Center that'll be opening next spring, that's a $50 million new science facilities and labs. We're looking to partner in the biotech space, in biosciences. We're one of the first colleges in America that allowed women to take science classes. So this goes all the way back to our roots. And so that's an area clearly we'll be expanding. Is it going to be at the same level as the University of Maryland Biotech Park? No. Is it going to be at Johns Hopkins? No. We're not a R1 research university. But a lot of our students at the undergraduate level compete very well at the undergrad at all of the science competitions with those schools. And so we can be a feeder to those institutions. And as you mentioned, we have an incredibly diverse population.
Yes.
43 states, we're a majority minority college at this point. We've got students from 60 different countries on campus. We can be a great feeder to those graduate programs within Maryland and keep them in Maryland. And so it's really those three areas, the biosciences and biotech, the construction and engineering, and then the expanding kind of retirement and elder care and community care, communities around public health and all those issues. We've really kind of looked at basically those are sweet spots for us.
For early indicator for Whiting Turner, what's going to be an indicator for them to show success? How is this going to be successful for Whiting Turner within the first 3 years?
That's a good question. More for Tim and the Whiting Turner team, but I think what Tim's looking for is that we've got his new training facility that will be part of it, separate and yet a part of this whole facility they're building with the headquarters. That he's got high school students in there, he's got community college students, he's got Goucher college students in there, training and internships and writing. That's going to be key for him, part of it. But the other bigger part is making sure that, as I said, giving people a reason to come back in the office, that having that kind of personal interaction and creating a campus-like environment where they can enjoy the proximity to Goucher College and they could take advantage of some things. And we've worked together with Sasaki campus design, a landscape design firm, to basically look at everything we need to do on our campus to integrate it with Edenwald and Whiting Turner. And we've taken a very different approach to many private colleges is we look at our 300 acres as a community resource. Mm-hmm. We actually want more people on our campus to use our trails, to use our tennis courts. That's okay. Because we feel that that's going to breed vitality. And I can't tell you how many times in my life where I've just happened to bump into somebody at an airport. I remember at a bus stop when I was in college. And boy, if I hadn't bumped into that person, that opportunity would have never. So we see those kind of things happening. If it's somebody coming over, retiree, playing tennis, and they bump into one of our students and they play something and they say, "Oh, what you major in?" And it's like, I actually could introduce you to that person because those little things that at first when you're 18, 19-year-old, you hear the concept of networking, you're like running away. That's networking. It's just being a human being.
Good old-fashioned networking.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, we've talked a lot about the challenges in the workforce. We talked about the challenges with education today. We talked about the challenges of enrollment going down. And the one thing that we didn't talk about as we started to talk and share with Kent's strategies and out-of-the-box thinking and how building engagement within the community has really driven a lot of success. Just last year, Goucher was massively successful, generating over $170 million in fundraising. And that really shows how much belief there is with obviously Kent's leadership, Goucher College, and where the future is going. And maybe you can share a little bit about what that massive gift, what that means to you, what it means to the school, and perhaps maybe some of the things that you want to do with those monks.
Obviously, I need to stress. I mean, we were very, very successful closing out our comprehensive campaign last spring. We had set a goal for ourselves 8 years ago of 100 million. And in the end, we raised, 172 million. So now, part of that is we were very, very fortunate for a couple of our alums who, from way back, had left us some very, very nice gifts in their estate. So that was wonderful.
It's a good problem to have.
It's a good problem to have. And I always say, it's like, I didn't do anything. And they said, yeah, but it happened on your watch. It's okay. But it had nothing to do with me. It really has to do with the team, with our advancement team, who's been so good at kind of staying in touch with our alums, checking in with them, and letting them know that even though the college looks very, very different today, we're no longer a women's college. We're no longer, if I go back to the early 50s, before Brown versus Board of Education, we were an entirely white, entirely women's college with very, very limited athletics. Today, we're an extremely diverse college. We're still about 68% women because men are tending less to go to college, which is a very dangerous long-term trend in America. And about a third of our students are athletes in 20 different sports, and we're actually doing much better every year. We're kind of moving up in the D3.
You can bring a hockey team in?
No, not gonna bring on a hockey team. So
Okay.
but everything else is moving along quite nicely. And I would also add that having more international students certainly has elevated our soccer team, our tennis team, our basketball team. They're all international in scope. And so in all these ways, I think us staying in touch with our alums has been, we may look different today, but the core message is the same. The core education that's happening, the core commitment to the values that started, that John Franklin, Goucher, and Mary Fisher founded this college on, haven't changed. It's about really exposing people and giving people the opportunity to better themselves and to move on. What the additional gifts give us is we've been able to increase our endowment from 188 million to 300 million since I've been here for the last 7 years. And so that's been a fantastic opportunity to know that, okay, we've got the reserves to tell us that we're going to be around for another 100 years, but it's still, we're like every other business. Tariffs, inflation, you name it, the cost of labor, just to be able to do that, is becoming more difficult every single year.
Well, you can actually hear some of the vehicles moving in and out. There's construction going on campus here. There's a lot of movement. Kent, I can't thank you enough for your time today. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I appreciate what you're doing because you're creating breakthroughs for not only the school, but for the community as well.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity to kind of share what we're doing here at Goucher.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks very much. We'll see you on the next episode.